I already know which song I want to be playing, and I just hope to God I don't get content ID'd. Hello media lovers, my name is Maya, but you can just call me Mediahead. So, strong female characters. There's a whole lot of ways to write them, but writers tend to not only fail in writing them, they tend to completely fall on their faces as they try to look for shortcuts around writing an actual character. Now, I could do a whole video on strong female characters, and maybe one day I will, but for now I want to focus on one specific kind of strong female character. The Femiboss. What's a Femiboss, you might ask? Well, she's somebody who has some kind of leadership role, either due to it being her actual official position, or just due to raw charisma and people wanting to hear what she has to say. She tends to be able to take control of a situation, or at least convince everyone in the room that her idea is the best idea and should be the one followed. Or people don't listen to her and it turns out to be a Cassandra Truth situation where she was right all along and a whole bunch of people regret not listening to her. You might have heard some people refer to these characters as a boss-ass bitch, or after Birds of Prey came out, Boss Bitch, based off of the song on the soundtrack, or some other kind of title that YouTube will not like if I put it in the title. So, Femiboss it is. As usual for countdowns like this, some ground rules. Only one woman per franchise. There are entire series made up of strong female characters, and without this rule, they would dominate the list. Also, a Femiboss isn't going to be described by who's the most powerful or who can hit the hardest. No, a Femiboss is going to be primarily ranked based off of her leadership skills, or her attitude, or how her Femibossness in general contributes to the plot. So just because there are some literal goddess characters out there, don't expect that to inherently mean that they're going to be on this list. And with that out of the way, let's get to ranking the top 6 Femibosses. Here's a story for you. Once there was a little girl born to a duke and duchess. The girl was well-studied, an excellent swordswoman by the time she hit puberty, and so admirable that the emperor himself arranged her to marry the crown prince once they came of age. However, the crown prince fell in love with a kind and beautiful girl, and the wedding was cancelled. Outraged and jealous, the girl, now woman, seeks to destroy this kind girl and the crowned prince, and has become a devil. And the kingdom waits eagerly for her defeat. This is the outsider's story of Medea Salone. Under immense pressure from her parents, Medea sought to be perfect for her mother and a pawn for her father, studying and practicing every day of her childhood. As she grew older, Medea proved herself to be smarter than either of her parents, and her father started stealing the credit for her strategies. Now enraged at her father's betrayal, Medea sought to become better than her parents, to surpass them, and the arrangement to the crown prince was the perfect way to do that. But then, the engagement was broken off, because the crown prince, Eros, had met the beautiful girl I mentioned earlier, named Psyche. Medea wished for everything that Psyche had, her reputation, her future position, everything. And God granted her wish. She body swapped with Psyche. However, as these stories usually go, Medea realized that Psyche's life isn't nearly as perfect as everyone was led to believe. Despite Psyche seeming like a golden era Disney princess, it's only because she was sheltered from a young age. And on top of that, she was being gaslighted by the prince the entire time of their relationship. Without giving away too many more plot details, Medea and Psyche have teamed up to take down Eros and the corrupt system that has not only allowed him to stay in power, but will happily bend to his will. And Medea is not the kind of woman you want to mess with. As I said, her intellect is scary. She's capable of borderline mind-reading a person with how well she can read people, and has come up with these ridiculous plans that are steps ahead, though in hindsight you can see how she came up with the plan. She's great at coded etiquette and adapting to a new snag in her plans, and thanks to her time in Psyche's body, has learned the importance of manipulating the public's opinion of people, as well as the importance of empathy, and has started to feel responsible for everyone she cares about in her life. Medea's story isn't over yet, hence why she's at the bottom of this list, but if the story is progressing the way I think it is, it's going to end with her and Psyche ruling the kingdom together, with a kind but firm fist having killed Eros and all of his pawns. And with how dangerous and intelligent Medea is, that day is going to be coming very soon. By the way, shout out to Psyche real quick. She's a bit too early in her journey of undoing all the brainwashing and gaslighting done to her for me to really consider her for this list, but if I ever redo this list, expect her and Medea to share a spot. Star Trek as a franchise has become well renowned for being built on genuine diversity, from the first interracial kiss to acknowledging different sexualities to what's most relevant for this video, well-written female characters. There is a wide range of Star Trek Femibosses that I had to choose from, but for this list, I'm going to go with the one whose leadership led to the largest number of first contacts since James T. Kirk himself. Captain, later Vice Admiral Janeway is what most people would refer to as a den mother. She's in charge of the Starship Voyager and its crew, and since she kind of thinks it's her fault that they're light years away from home, takes it upon herself to be responsible for the entire crew as well as the ship. Janeway is an absolute force of nature when she wants to be. The entire crew is incapacitated by a giant supervirus? Time to go Ripley on those bugs' asses. Aliens have been secretly performing life-threatening experiments on you and the crew for months now? Okay, time to start flying the ship into a binary pulsar until the aliens beg you to stop and promise they'll leave you alone. Simply put, Janeway doesn't take kindly to people threatening the crew or the ship and will do anything within her power, and sometimes outside of her power, to keep the crew and the ship as intact as physically possible. Admittedly, that same willpower can get a bit much, with it occasionally leading to her prioritizing her work over both her own and the crew's mental well-being. She herself admits to intense imperfections. By God, night is one giant existential crisis. Still, when stuck in a crisis, if you have Janeway on your side, just know you are about to get out of it. This one was a given. Also assume I'm only talking about the versions of her who are plus size. Being a good guy is not a prerequisite for being a femiboss. Amanda the Wall of Waller's philosophy is basically a better and more genuine version of Lex Luthor's motive against Superman. For Waller, someone has to police these superheroes, or at least keep an eye on them, just in case they go rogue. And considering the existence of the Justice Lords and the Crime Syndicate, I can't exactly blame her. In the meantime, she might as well take on all the issues that other government officials and well-meaning superheroes shouldn't have to face to keep the world, well, America, but overall the world, a safe place. As I brought up pretty briefly in the Black Tropes video, Amanda Waller is so unstoppable and usually creepily right that she looked the president dead in the eye and said, "We're keeping Task Force X. It's for your own good." Waller is willing to fight for her country in the shadows and be hated by everyone, though also respected by everyone around her, including Batman. Though, as cold and heartless as she is, she does have a moral code, and has been shown to be willing to lay down her life alongside the rest of the Suicide Squad as long as it means that she is doing it to save her fellow Americans. I guess the reason I view her as a femiboss is not only because she's such a leader that she's capable of bringing world leaders to their knees, she's also extremely consistent and refuses to be a hypocrite. She keeps the Justice League alive even though she has the means to kill them herself, not only because it would end up turning public favor against the government, but also because she understands the value of having a group out there that has a less gray philosophy than she does. Still, don't think that her having a sense of morality means that you can get away with being soft and fuzzy around her, because as long as she has a country to protect, Amanda Waller is willing to use anything in her power, including you, to keep America safe. You know you're a badass when a whole bunch of 80s nerds called you a Mary Sue. I won't pretend to be the biggest Star Wars fan, but everything I know about Leia from the movies and the occasional show is intense. Getting into politics as a teenager and then joining a rebellion against a governmental system that you personally profit off of as royalty is already pretty badass. But then you get into the fact that she had to keep her rebellious status a secret in order to keep Alderaan from getting involved. After all, Alderaan is her home and culture. Of course she wants to keep it as safe as possible. Well, that sucks. But even after her entire home planet was destroyed, Leia was not going to let the Empire win without a fight. What makes Leia such a boss is just her refusal to sit there and let things happen to her. In one of her first badass moments in the franchise that was nonverbal, she got sick of these boys being terrible shots who had no plan and just took Luke's blaster and started shooting stormtroopers herself. She gives misleading information under the guise of being emotionally driven, and when a new empire rises out of the ashes with her son at the helm, she takes on the role of general and leads the new rebellion. Because say what you will about episodes 7 through 9, they at bare minimum got Leia's characterization right.
That's not how the Force works.
Oh, shut the hell up. They literally suggest in the OG trilogy that she should be capable of using the Force. I am sick of the fanboys. What would you do if you learned that the person who raised you, the person you love more than anyone else in the world, had ulterior motives against you and yours? That is the question that Emma from Promised Neverland had to answer, and she had to answer it soon. I'm going to be as vague as possible in this entry because I think everyone should watch season 1 of Promised Neverland and go in as blind as they can get away with. But basically, what you need to know is that Emma has been raised with a whole bunch of other kids as orphans, completely unaware of what's outside the land of the Gracefield house. But one day, Emma and her friend Norman learn what's out there, and learn why they're here, and realize that they need to get out. The reason Emma's on this list is because of her selflessness and optimism. While her more logical friends keep on telling her that she needs to be selfish and just run with them on their own, she doesn't want to leave her siblings behind. While everyone else is saying that the rest of them will be a liability because some of her siblings are as young as 3 years old, she doesn't want to leave them to the horrors that she knows are waiting for them. Keep in mind, she's not naive. She is highly aware of the liability risks, but she just doesn't want to back down unless it's the only option left. There's also the fact that Emma has to outsmart and outmaneuver Isabella, the woman they all call Mom. Let me rephrase that in another way. In order to escape, Emma has to outmaneuver the woman who raised her entire life. And again, without giving too much away, Isabella is only where she is today because of her high intellect and manipulative tactics. I know I am being vague here, but I swear, I promise to you that Emma deserves her place on this list. I know that an escape attempt from a house might seem pretty dull compared to having to protect the world or overthrow a corrupt system, but trust me, she has the leadership skills and the confidence to pull off feats just like the other entries on this list, and she gets bonus points for doing all this at 11 years old. Just watch Promised Neverland. It's honestly one of the best anime I've ever seen, with its choreography and its tense moments as it just builds up to something bigger. And then you go read the manga for the rest, because season 2 will never come out. It will never come out. It never has come out. It doesn't exist. Before I get to number 1, here are some honorable mentions, as there were a lot of women to choose from, and I am sad that I had to cut it short. Olivia Mira Armstrong. She was actually initially on the list before Medea bumped her off. It's actually in character now that I think about it. And between her military might and the respect she pulls from her men, it's no surprise she was considered. Elizabeth Swan, from a petite but confident lady to, well, at World's End. Miss Swan was strongly considered, but sadly her overall absence in the last 2 movies made it hard to justify placing her on the list. Wonder Woman. I honestly left Diana off because she'd be too easy of a pick. Plus, I'd either have to choose my favorite version of her or do a mass entry for every good version of Diana. Waller's easy to do that for. Diana, not so much. Mona Lisa Vito. That one court scene was enough to get her a consideration, though she's casually calling out her husband in the background throughout the entire movie. However, too much of her character revolves around supporting Vinny for her to really make the cut. Cecilia Cass. Anyone who can survive that nightmare for that long and who does what she does at the end of the movie definitely counts as a Femiboss. Maleficent, specifically the animated version. I'm sorry, do I need to explain why she was considered? The only reason she's not on this list is because she lost, and she only lost because she was the villain in a Disney movie. Now, on to number 1. I'll admit it, my top pick is a controversial one. Half because of pure personal preference, and half just due to the very criteria I've set up matching up to a character who is unexpected to some. All of the entries in this list so far have had leadership skills as promised, as well as some sense of empathy or responsibility. They're all confident in their abilities, or they grow into that confidence over time. And don't get me wrong, the number 1 pick has all of these qualities in spades. But she shows one specific trait above the rest. Inspiration. Now, don't get me wrong, all of the other entries on this list are inspiring, and probably most definitely have inspired people in the past. But I mean inspirational. And I don't mean like Leia, where it's just inspirational, like, hi, you finally have representation. I mean getting people to specifically do a thing that they never considered they could physically do before. Inspirational. This woman, without having to be stern or cold or any other quality you expect a Femiboss to be, just so they can survive in a man's world, managed to single-handedly teach every woman and girl that you can do whatever the hell you want, regardless of what kind of woman you are. And a Femiboss can come from anywhere. I'm not kidding. Elle Woods doesn't act like your stereotypical Femiboss right off the bat, which is the point. The original book is based off of the writer's experiences in Stanford Law, being looked at and jeered at because she was a girly girl going into a serious profession. And the movie focuses more on Elle's journey to discover that she's intelligent enough and ambitious enough to become a Femiboss. And at the end of the movie, you get to see her finally be one. Let's just pretend that she wasn't already a Femiboss a la her sorority and the influence she had over them. I mean, for the love of God, the woman has a 4.0 GPA in fashion merchandising, which honestly, her major is a good summary of herself. Like, as speaking as someone who's going to a school, though it's not her major, with a major fashion program, after seeing like a million students just kind of dying at 3 in the morning, that is a hardcore major. and she got a 4.0 in it. In the sequel, she has the raw determination to go to Congress to fight against animal testing. And when everyone laughed at her about it, she went, okay, and circumvented the system to gain personal connections with the politicians she needed to control to get her bill passed. This is Elle Woods in a nutshell. She doesn't care what the hell the system says and therefore what society says about what she can and can't do. She'll just do it. The point is, Elle Woods is a femiboss because she doesn't give a damn about what other people think of her. She will do things the Elle way if that's the way that works. And that philosophy has spoken to a lot of people. Just the other day on Twitter, I saw someone post something about how they're graduating soon from law school and did a photo op in Legally Blonde fashion. And she's not alone in this. You just Google inspiration, Legally Blonde or Elle Woods, and you get stories upon stories of girls and women who plan on going to law school or are going to law school or went to law school because of Elle Woods and her inspiration. Or women in law school who were afraid of expressing themselves and acting a bit less masculine, let's be honest, until they saw the movie and realized, hey, it's okay to be a girly girl, it's okay to be a POC, a neurodivergent, a blonde, and go to law school and become a scientist or whatever. Elle Woods told women, including me, do not let some dumbass whose mind has been poisoned by the patriarchy tell you what you can and cannot do. For some of you, that wasn't enough to convince you that Elle Woods deserves a top spot, and that's okay. Because all I know is that I'm going to be sitting over here, I'm going to be working on my major, and one of these days, because, you know, media, some jackass is going to come up to me and try to explain to me why I cannot do this, and I will look them right in the eye and tell them,
what, like it's hard?
Bow down to the queen because Elle Woods is the #1 femiboss in media.
We did it!
I just realized I forgot to write an outro for this video. Well, anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this other list video. It initially was going to be a top 5 like my others, but I didn't want to put any of the people I had off my list. And I actually did consider making a top 10 for a while, but I did not want to put that on myself if I can help it. I do plan on one day genuinely making a top 10 video, but I keep on rambling when I get to stuff I like. I'm sorry. Like one day I will cut it enough for me to justify it, or I'll go screw it and make like a 30-40 minute top 10 video because screw it. But today was not that day. Anyway, for now I must say adieu on this foggy yet hot as hell day because Mother Nature is angry at us and I cannot blame her. I'll see you in a bit, media lovers.